I'm really thrilled to be moderating this panel today with such great speakers. And it's sort of nice that Alexander's not here because we were having a really good chat outside and now we've got a little bit more time to fill with one less panellist. These guys could start a podcast, seriously, with the chat that we were just having outside. So this session is about from docs to data. So we are talking about digitalisation of ports. This is a sector which is a very traditional sector. And what we're going to do, because I think many of you may... actually, let's do a show of hands. Who here works in the shipping industry? Okay, right, so we have some work to do. And the work that we're going to do is demystify ports a little bit. So sort of really set out what some of the problems are that these guys are trying to solve in their businesses. So just so you get a real sense of what it's like in this industry. And then we'll sort of overlay that with this, digitalisation of the sector and AI in ports as well, and what direction we see this industry going in. It's actually it's a really interesting sector. I'm a little bit sort of fascinated by ports, having grown up around them as well with my family that was in shipping, but I didn't really understand it and it's not been my area of expertise. So I think this is going to be a really great panel as these guys unpack this for us. Why don't we actually start by sort of laying out what it is that you do, what it is that your company does, what your business does, what your research is, just to give us a little sense of who you are rather than diving in too fast into the questions. So Som, perhaps I'll start with you first. Oh, you've got your own microphone there. And just tell us what exactly it is that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Erin, and great to be here with such a wonderful panel and such a wonderful audience. My name is Som Datta. I am the Group Vice President of AI at DP World and the Global Head of AI at DP World. And we have been investing massively in AI at DP World. We see it as the transformative technology that it is. And if I had to sort of divide what we do into two buckets, essentially, around AI and data, it would be optimization and enterprise transformation. And the first one, optimization, is really about all these physical assets that we have, like ports and terminals. How do you essentially improve them significantly? How do you improve throughput and efficiency? And how do you make them work smarter and more intelligently using the very advanced cutting-edge AI tools that are at our disposal today and that are constantly coming online at a very fast pace, right? How do you leverage optimization to the max, really? To do that. So that's one pillar. But of course, the other pillar is enterprise transformation, which is not just DP World, but every single large enterprise or any enterprise in the world, which is increasingly beginning to realize that LLM-powered workflows have the ability to dramatically accelerate how knowledge work is done. And it's a super exciting time to be in that area. And we are leaning heavily into it so that we boost our productivity and really accelerate work in all aspects, right? So we'll talk about both those pillars as we go through the talk, and especially a focus on optimization because, as you know, this is about ports and terminals and how data can transform that. So very nice to be here, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Som. That's really great. Dawoon, can you tell us a little bit about your research and what it is that you focus on?
Thank you, Erin. I'm a lecturer at the Austrian National Center for Ocean Resources and Security at the University of Wollongong. So ANCORS is the only multidisciplinary research center in Australia focusing on ocean issues. So we have more than 40 staff members working on the maritime issues by doing research and teaching, and some of us involved in the capacity building programs in Southeast Asia and Pacific Island. I'm a lawyer working on the law of the sea, and I have been working on several research projects relating shipping, focusing on the role of the International Maritime Organization. So I believe that my background is quite different from Som and Ganga today, but I hope that I can provide a bit more regulatory issues with a lot of the very interesting technological development.
Yeah, that's a really good point about the regulatory side of this. So I'm going to park that for some extra questioning when we come to you again later, Dawoon. So Ganga, what about you? What do you do?
So I'm the founder of EdAI. What EdAI does is process automation for container terminals, RoRo terminals, break bulk, and bulk terminals. Now, what does that mean? To keep it very simple, any truck, any ship, any train that comes in, how quickly can we turn it around with goods? That's what we do. And we do that using AI, hence the name AI. But to keep it on a much larger spectrum, I think we do some stuff similar to what Som does, but they're doing it at a different scale. We're doing it from all the way from a terminal. We looked at goods as a point where it's going through multiple points. So how to do automation of a port to a rail terminal, to a warehouse, to a distribution center. So it's all connected logistics, end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Ganga. And I'm actually going to throw the first question to you, and I think I already know what your answer will be. I know what the short answer will be, but I'm not sure what the long answer will be. So can you just sort of frame up for us, what are the tech innovations that could change how we do business in ports? And can we imagine a world of shipping without logistics-related paperwork and cumbersome procedures? What do you think?
No, I think, again, the answer is yes. I think
I got that right.
Yes, you did. I think everyone knows, I think even a general human being today understands from the market, once COVID hit, everyone realized the importance of tech and the importance of supply chain. Because without the goods or even perishable goods, what we eat, the moment it halts, we're losing some of our edible stuff, or our needs, our materialistic needs. Now, I think the importance of tech, again, shipping is one of the oldest industry. And to give you some facts about shipping industry, I don't know how much you guys know, 80% of the global goods movements moves through shipping. Even though you have so many flights, you have so many other modes. And now, you would expect, it's been the oldest industry, most of the goods. So most of you are thinking, okay, there should be heavy automation or heavy tech in the ports. To give you more statistics, only 4.2% of the global ports are automated. That's it. So why is that? If you go down to a port, leave even any other port, you have Mumbai port right here, JNPA. There are still some terminals that use a paper and pen for tracking. Okay, you guys are thinking India is like that. I will take you to ports in North America. USA is supposed to be the most futuristic. There are ports that are still working on paper and pen, because that's what they knew how to do, and that's the way it needs to be done. So taking that into perspective, now that they realize, listen, if we don't go in the new age of digitalization, we're going to be falling behind. As every one of you, I think most of you are using Gen AI right now for your day-to-day needs. And that's where the ports are now picking it up quite aggressively, saying, okay, we need to go into digitalization. So I think one of the biggest steps now happening, Aaron, everyone is actually at least moving to a digital form and manually trying to load that information, because data, that type of data means a lot. So even trying to go back and get their old data, they're now using AI to scan all those documents to get that data in, to understand the historical actions or the motions of what the trends are. I think I'll stop there, because we'll get into more details
later. It's a really
later.
interesting thing to think about. You've teased out a few pieces here where, if you're not thinking about shipping day in, day out, which most people aren't, we sort of think about optimization around how we order something online. But then we can make that as fast as we like. But then if the ship is still operating with paper and pen, like, to get that item that I've ordered from, Amazon or, Shein or I don't shop at Shein, but if you were, and that's all about speed and speed to market, and then it's actually getting transported back, and there's a paper and pen signing it in at the dock. Like it's quite an interesting thing to then think about. Actually, this is a space where there's a huge amount of opportunity, and so how can AI help Gunga? What does AI do? How does it reduce costs and delays, and what's the biggest benefit with the introduction of AI in ports?
So again, I can put it from the perspective of what we do. The logic behind how we started our company is what you can see as a human being and what you can comprehend with your brain, AI can do it. But then how is AI doing it? It's just using its 10 or 20 different brains looking at the same aspect. Now, using that today, again, as per Gartner, manual intervention. So when a human being notes down something, the error or the accuracy rate is 96% or 95.8%, where AI gives you 99.9% accurate information. Now, using AI, a human being cannot comprehend, say, okay, today the smartest genius, Einstein, right? And it is medically said that only 5% of his brain was utilized to be even doing what he was doing. But then if you take 10 of that, which is what AI is, or even more, and you use it towards a certain application, what's going to happen? So there's 3 goals any port or any logistics, anyone that's trying to do. Number 1 is they want to bring down the cost of operations. That means there's heavy investment into every crane that they put in, every land that they buy, every infrastructure that they put in. So they want to be able to use the same infrastructure, but increase their capacity. Number 2, they want to bring down the emissions, because today the highest carbon emissions is coming from shipping. Now, how do you bring that down? And number 3, of course, everyone wants to make more money, right? So these are the 3 things that I guess AI is going to help improve.
Yeah, and help drive. Yeah. Okay. So, perhaps I'll come to you now, and we sort of, there are these opportunities there. AI can help with this. Has DP World and the ports and terminals industry in general explored the use of advanced AI to sort of optimize different aspects of terminal operations? So yard management, ITV scheduling, berth planning. How's DP World doing this?
Great question. And it's a really exciting time for us in such a traditional industry to be doing this, actually, to be leaning into it so heavily, right? Throughput and efficiency, as Ganga just said, are such critical things, right? And of course, there have been software systems around to do this for the longest time. They're called a TOS, Terminal Operating System. A terminal operating system is the software that runs the port. And it's been doing a really good job of it for the last 25, 30 years. Planning, or specifically advanced planning, is a very critical part of ports. Ships are coming in, containers are getting offloaded, they've got to be put somewhere, that ITVs have got to come and pick them up, a crane has to go and move it from here to there. We know all of these things, and TOSs have heuristics or rules which basically say, okay, here's what's happening, and this is, with all the knowledge I have at my disposal right now, this is how I'm going to plan the terminal for the next hour, the next 24 hours, and the next week. And they've been doing a good job of that. But at this point in time, we have a much more powerful tool to attack this problem with, and that tool is AI, right? So at DP World, we took inspiration from something that Google had done about 10 years ago when it came to game-playing AIs. I don't know, maybe a lot of people over here have heard that, about 10 years ago, Google built an AI program called AlphaGo, which beat Lee Sedol, who was the world champion in the game of Go. Now, Go is a very interesting game. Go is not chess exactly. It's a strategy game. It's as much intuition as it is rules. Chess is exactly rule-based, right? This. But Go is more of strategy and intuition. So it was considered very remarkable that an AI could beat the world champion in Go. Now, the way Google did this was using a technique called deep reinforcement learning. I'm sorry, this is a bit of a segue, but I think it's interesting, so I'm spending some time on it. So the way they built it was they used this technique called deep reinforcement learning and something called Monte Carlo tree search, which is a fancy way of saying that we simulate millions and billions of future scenarios which have never happened. So the AI kind of plays chess against itself or plays Go against itself, playing millions of permutations and combinations which have never been actually played by grandmasters or anybody else. And in doing so, it learns where the good outcomes are and where the not so good outcomes are. So what's a good outcome in chess or Go? It's obviously just binary, right? Winning or losing, right? But if you can take that technique of millions of future pathways and apply it to ports and terminals, then we thought, why not give it a go? Why not try it? And we actually built such a system, which is in the early stages of deployment right now at DP World. And we attack different aspects of port operations. One of the biggest bottlenecks in ports is something called unproductive moves. You put containers in a yard and you want to pick them up, but sometimes the one you want to pick up is lower down in a stack, and you've got to do a lot of wasteful moving of every container which is on top, right? So if you could figure out by looking at the future that, here's the optimal placement of a container so that you'll have to reshuffle it less. You can never reshuffle it to zero. There'll always be reshuffles. But can you reduce them? Can you, think of the impact it would make, for example, on emissions, right? Which Ganga just spoke about. You would basically be utilizing less fuel in the ARMG. Your trucks would be moving less. You'd be really helping the environment, right? And of course, you'd be, more importantly, dramatically speeding up the throughput and efficiency of the port, which is almost like creating extra capacity, and of course, making your customers very happy. So we've built this out. It operates in a virtual environment. We're in the process of deploying it, and we're very excited to see how we take it out to all of our 70 terminals, because DP World, basically, 10% of global trade is really going through us. 33% of India's exports and imports go through DP World. Our ports and terminals handle a lot of stuff. So, hopefully it'll be impactful.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you put it that way. Talk about the container and like the ideal placement of the container. I would have thought we'd have figured that out already, but we haven't, right? Like it's a really old school sector. And
a surprisingly hard problem too.
Yeah. It's the Tetris of the shipping world, right? Yeah, really interesting. Now, we sort of, I'm going to do a little pivot to paperwork and talk about that. Now, I asked Ganga at the outset, can we imagine a world where it's, where it's a paperless sector? What is it that you're doing? How do these reasoning LLM models really accelerate document processing? And, could we have a completely end-to-end pipeline without documents in this sector, through the digitization?
Absolutely. Again, super exciting time to be doing exactly what Erin just mentioned. Because when ChatGPT came out in the end of 22, it was basically a text completion model, and it was very good at answering textual questions. But what's happened in the last 2 years is the emergence of VLMs, visual language models, right? Which are able to understand documents and images as well as a human being does. And so this opens up a very exciting possibility, because for the first time, you can look at a document, a piece of paperwork like an invoice, and the model can look at it the way a human looks at it. Now, the subtle fact over here, which is so important, is that everybody publishes their invoices or their customs documents, everything in a different way. To expect everyone, every shipper, every freight forwarder to conform to a particular format is just unrealistic. It's not going to happen. So if you can't templatize, then you really need an AI that can understand any and every format in the world. And the good news is that it's actually now capable of doing that. So you can give it 1,000 different formats, it doesn't matter. It'll figure out exactly where on the invoice, what field means what. For example, on the left-hand side, you have the airway bill number, the container number, the address, the payment details, everything. The VLMs, the visual language models, including GPT-5 thinking, which is the frontier model right now, is amazingly good at picking this stuff up. So what we have done is we have started with automating invoice processing from our shippers. We have a shared services center in Mumbai where we're piloting these things, and we intend to scale it out dramatically because the benefits are so obvious. Why would we not substantially speed up all of document understanding? So we call this a document understanding platform, because it's not just extraction, it's reasoning. And the ability to reason with the things we extract is what makes this workflow really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like me trying to reconcile my receipts at the end of the month for my
Absolutely.
business. Now, let's go to you, because we're already seeing that there's a whole bunch of regulatory problems that can come up here. And, you mentioned UNCLOS earlier. I mean, the rules around the world of shipping are very traditional, right? Like it's simple in that sense. So how does overlaying these challenges? Where do we go from a regulatory standpoint? And what are the challenges around data privacy, cybersecurity? What are your perspectives on this?
Erin, thank you for the great question. I I want to introduce some development at the International Maritime Organization relating to digitalization, which can be linked to the technological development that Ganga and Som introduced. First, mandatory maritime single window regulations were introduced last year, which require ships and ports to use the one single digital platform. And this is a very important framework to simplify the data exchange between ports, customs, and stakeholders. So if you imagine that there are so many ships entering into ports, and they need to submit all different kinds of certificates and information to enter into ports. But if they do not get the confirmation from the port authorities, then they should be still standing around the outside ports. So by adopting the mandatory maritime single window, they can reduce time and they can facilitate the efficiency, and it can also facilitate the paperless procedures as well. And with this kind of development, IMO also adopted the guidelines for use of electronic certificates this year. So I was thinking that even though it is mandatory, it becomes mandatory, but not every state have the capacity to develop the maritime single window, especially for developing countries. So IMO provides or encourages the states advance in the implementation of the maritime single window to share their know-how or expertise with developing countries. And they also provide some pilot project by providing financial support to the small island developing countries. But when I heard, while I was listening to Som and Ganga's the points and technological development relating to AI, I was thinking that it would be very important that we have regulations, and this kind of technological development will facilitate to implement of the regulation. And this year, there is a very important development at the IMO that the facilitation committee approved the work plan for the development of the comprehensive IMO strategy on maritime digitalization. And the strategy aims to identify existing and emerging technologies, standards, and methodologies that can support maritime digitalization. And IMO encourages not only government, but also international organizations to be involved in the early discussion in shaping the IMO digitalization strategy. And it's quite interesting that the IMO Secretary General addresses that the IMO maritime digitalization strategy will be a game-changing effort to respond to the digital transformation in the maritime sector. And it is expected to be adopted by the end of the 2027. So it's a slightly early stage to talk about the strategy on maritime digitalization. But I think in the context of port and digitalization, it is a great opportunity to discuss how to have a harmonized approach to development of a port states to utilize different digital technologies such as digital certificates and port management system. But we have been talking about a lot of different developments at the IMO, but IMO also recognized the importance and the growing risk from the cybersecurity issues. So they have, this year, they have adopted the revised version of the guidelines on maritime cyber risk management. And the primary goal of these revised guidelines is to help maritime industry build a robust cyber security framework and to ensure the safety operation of vessels and ports. It does not provide not only the cybersecurity threats against vessels, but it also touches upon some issues relating to ship and port interfaces. So I believe that these kinds of ongoing efforts, the IMO provides not only fill the gap in the regulatory framework, but also provide a big picture in the maritime sector.
Though one thing that just jumped out at me that you mentioned was the maritime digitalization strategy, and you said that it will be adopted in 2027. Is that right? So I think that kind of highlights like how slow the regulatory environment is moving, and perhaps we can tease that out with the others. But you know, it sounds like it's not really able to. What is it in the IMO that makes it happen so slowly? Like, what are the blockers there? Because these guys are moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And the sector is moving ahead, but 2027 for the digitalization strategy, let alone that then flowing down to national level legislation or anything like that, is such a long game. What do you think? Like, why does it take so long to regulate in this sector? Or is that just regulation more generally?
This is a very interesting question, and I think one of the reasons that they do not have the meeting every month. So every committee has a different schedule, but they usually have up to twice a year. They have the meetings twice a year, and the regulations tend to slower than the development of the technologies, but still, the beauty of the IMO is the very active participation of the shipping industry. So even though the discussions can be slightly slower than the industry, but still industry are actively participating in the discussion, and they share their knowledges or best practices, and then they also have the observer status at the IMO meetings. So I think still it can be slightly slower, but still the role of the shipping industry plays a very, very important in the developing regulations.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm going to go a little bit off the cuff now, but and perhaps I'll pass to Som and Ganga to whichever of you would like to jump in. How do you view this regulatory environment? What's your reflections on this? And I know a lot of people in industry, they're just going at 1,000,000 miles an hour doing what they're doing and not really thinking about it. But I know the audience here is particularly interested in this stuff. I hasten to say that there's probably a lot of policy wonks in the room. So, from an industry perspective, what are you thinking about the regulatory environment? I'm assuming that someone like DP World probably has a seat at these tables. Unsure, in your sector, but what do you think? Gunga, you go first.
It's a great thing that you asked. I don't know how many of you guys follow the policy. The EU just released their AI Act. It's a pretty harsh one. Again, US came out with it first. EU just released it. I don't know how many of you seen India came out with a draft quite recently, just last year. I think it's going to be published this year. It definitely, regulation comes later. The reason is they need to understand how and what any of these technologies is going to be utilized for. And it can be for the best or the worst, right? So if you see, there was no such thing of cyber risk or even that term used in the maritime industry for the last, till like 4 or 5 years ago. And now you see that's the number one priority for any port operator. I mean, just to give you context, every contract that we sign has multi-million cyber security liabilities that we're signing, which were not even seen 2 years ago. So now the act has to come in to protect cyber risks. So it always comes later because of these situations. But again, there are many bodies, not just the IMO. Now, no one ever expected there'll be an ISO coming out on the maritime industry. And now we're actually part of it. I think all of us, because of the standards committee like TIC 4.0, DCSA.
Yeah.
So now we're actually participating and saying, hey, this is what the standards has to be. This is what the ISO has to be. So tomorrow, any technology company or any supplier that comes in without that ISO for shipping or maritime, they're not going to be allowed in. Like how we have 2015 or 2007 certification for high product quality, or like even today, if you're working with the economic data for any country without a certain ISO, you're not allowed in.
Yeah.
But it takes time, because for people to understand, again, the best and the worst. If it's always the best, it's great. But unfortunately, we live in an economy where the worst also happens with the tech.
I mean, like, what is the worst when it comes to shipping? You sort of, I can see what the best is around optimization and speed and, you know, energy transitions and making more money and whatever. What is the bad stuff that you're talking about when it comes to ports and ships? And then I'll come to you, Dawoon.
Number one, I'll give you a very, very basic example. Leave even technology side. The ILA on the east coast of North America just stopped operations for 5 days. They lost over a couple of $1 billion because the whole economy halted. Just because they went on a strike. Few ports on the east coast of North America. Now understand, last year, somewhere in Africa, and I will not mention it, there were some hackers that attacked a certain entity and kept them liable for 30 days. And the whole country economy shut down because of that.
Yeah.
Worst side of AI.
Yeah.
Again, this is how do you protect yourself, and what do you do? And
that's that point about COVID that you made earlier, which is people only realize then. I mean, in Australia, where we import so much stuff, and you know, we're on this little island down there on our own. I mean, the supply chains just, you know, I'm not going to say they didn't quite collapse, but you know, people felt it, right? And it became very real. Like it was almost like the supply chain was tangible in a way. So that can start to make a lot more sense to people. It's not this sort of ambiguous thing that's happening out there. It's very real. Dawoon, you wanted to add something.
On the additional point that Ganga mentioned, that I was thinking that IMO provides a forum to reconcile different conflicting interests, because not only developing countries but also developed countries, they may have different interests or economic interests related to shipping. There can be also labor supply states, and there are also ship owners. So there are so many different conflicting interests related to shipping. So to make a balance between these all different kinds of conflict and interest and make a harmonized regulation to make everyone happy can take some time.
Is there a geopolitical angle in the IMO in terms of, you know, is there major power competition? How does that play out in the maritime world and with ports and shipping? Ganga's laughing, but Dawoon, I mean, it's, you know, what do you think? How do these dynamics play out? Because I can kind of imagine an environment where we end up with, you know, maybe perhaps it's China and some others, and then it's the US and others, and there's different types of technology and there's different standards. And how does the IMO grapple with this?
That's a very interesting question, and I'm not sure whether I can give you a very clear answer on that. But as for the IMO is mainly working on the safety of shipping and the environmental prevention of the marine environment from shipping, but also it works relating maritime security relating shipping. So geopolitics can also very have some interest or some issues relating to security issues, for example, like Red Sea crisis as well. But IMO does not have the compliance authority, but it provides a forum to discuss all the issues relating to the shipping. So that's why how the IMO has been working well, but at the same time, the role of the shipping industry again is very, very important, and it's quite different from other international organizations because Erin briefly mentioned the COVID-19, and when I was working on the COVID-19 and shipping, I found that shipping industry was much faster to develop the practices and then guidelines to deal with these kinds of new threat to the shipping. And shipping industry proposed and suggest and they shared all their best practices, and the government started to think, oh, this can be good idea or this can be good guidelines, and they also shared all the information among the all relevant stakeholders. So I believe that by doing this kind of the sharing information and discussing with all different stakeholders together, that's why IMO has been working, developing the regulation shipping on the so many different issues.
Is that a cultural thing of the industry? You know, you talk about how much sharing there is, and yes, the IMO is a platform for that, but it sounds to me like there's a cultural element around the industry where there are people are working really collaboratively, and people like the industry actually does come together to solve these problems quite well, and perhaps ways other industries don't.
So I think so. So whenever you look at the IMO documents, they always recognize the importance of the stakeholders or shipping industry, and the IMO strategy on the maritime digitalization. It also highlights to involve of the all relevant stakeholders in shaping the strategy. And I think it shows that how the importance of shipping industry in the development of the regulation and guidelines and strategy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ganga, you were laughing when I asked that question about the geopolitics. So what's your angle on this?
Again, every trade is geopolitical.
Yeah.
I think that should answer. That's why I was laughing. It's dictated by I think the other thing that I didn't mention is what's the worst side of AI. Now that you have so much data, you're understanding what your economy is going to be. And economy and trade dictates every country's wealth. Yeah. And if you have access to that data, you can either use it for the best or the worst.
Yeah. Som, we'll come to you, but just before you pick up the mic again, we do have a little bit of time for questions. So if you've got a burning question for our panel, let us know. Som, what's your...
No, I'm just going to pick up on Ganga's point, which is the data being sort of the new oil and how critical it is. And, we see this a lot, actually. We see the whole concept of sovereign AI coming up, where countries want to have their own AI. They're like, okay, there's a lot of thinking now around our data should not leave our borders. And in some countries, you see a very aggressive push towards that. And it's understandable, right? Because suddenly the fact that data is so important is now becoming very apparent and very obvious. Going back to the point about regulation, excuse me, what I'll mention from DP World's point of view is that absolutely, to Ganga's point, contracts that are negotiated today are very rigorous on these fronts. For example, if DP World wants to use a frontier model from an external provider, at this point, we're like, we will negotiate every single clause and every single thing. The cybersecurity schedule, for example, that we negotiate is again gone over line by line. It plays a very critical role because now we understand that while these models are powerful and effective, we need to very tightly control what data is going to any model. Right, and so the whole concept of rigorous cybersecurity controls being in place, coupled with sovereign AI, which is this whole push for the fact that every country thinks that we should have our own foundational model. This is not technology that we want to outsource to somebody else, and you see a lot of investment and a lot of effort coming over there. We are participating in every way that we can and trying to shape these conversations. And to Dawoon's point, it is a collaborative effort. For example, I don't think the IMO mandates, right? It's more of, discussion and figuring out, okay, where do we converge to? How do we converge to? I think it's a good practice. And I'm confident that while the industry has historically been, deliberate, but we'll end up in a good place. So, yeah.
Yeah, interesting, Som. Do we have any questions? We've got one over here well, actually, we have many. We'll start. Why don't we take 2 questions? So we'll take from the front row here, and then we'll sort of move through, and hopefully we'll be able to get to everyone. So we'll take 2 questions, and we'll do 1 round of responses before the next slide.
Good afternoon, Martijn Thijssen, Port Rotterdam, heading up the digital strategy. So a lot of recognizable topics. Pretty keen on getting the panel's input and thoughts on digital identities and federated data sharing, because a lot of these documents that we're talking about in data have a legal status, right? So we need to have proof that the captain on a vessel is indeed on the vessel he said it is. So how do we tackle that, and how do we go to federated data sharing on different data elements, not so much on documents or on packages?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So digital ID, and then your question down the front here as well. We'll take yours.
Hello, my name is Rene Gomez from the Maritime Chamber of Shipping in Panama. So mainly we go to the Latin American area. So Mr. Som, since you have many ports in the area and around the globe, can you share some challenges and I would say success stories on implementing digital platforms and AI in the Latin America region?
Great. All right, we'll go to you first, Som.
Sure. So we're in the early stages of actually doing this. And at this point, we have not implemented anything in the Latin American region. But Callao, as you know, is a major port of ours. And that is going to be a major source of a major port where we sort of take these technologies out. Our initial focus has been on ports like Jebel Ali and Busan in Korea, where we have implemented, we're in the early stages of implementing a lot of this tech. We look for heavily data-rich environments, which are also sort of heavily utilized. So that, you know, there's a capacity crunch, there's a constraint over there. And so if you deploy AI at scale, they will get immediate relief, which they are asking for at this time, because they are essentially choked. You know, the volumes are huge, a lot of trade going through these ports. And so the idea is to build and scale out in these ports and then take it worldwide. But we're in the early stages of that, so hopefully that answers. Yeah.
Thanks, Som. Perhaps we'll pass to Darwin and Gunga to answer the first question if you've got something to say about digital ID.
So as for the digital certificate, there are ongoing practice, as you can see from the IMO guidelines, but we have not touched upon the autonomous vessels today. But with the development of autonomous vessels, I believe that digital certificate becomes very important issues. And the IMO has been developing the maritime autonomous surface ships code, which will be finalized by next year. And then it has it touch upon some digital certificate issues there.
A simple answer is they should look to India. We have something called DigiYatra. Today, we're doing a digital signature of every single human being, which is entering and exiting from a airport. The same thing can be applied from the vessel side, even from a port or even within a vessel with the geo stamping added onto it, which again, see, I know trade links try to do it. Unfortunately, a shipper cannot own the data. That's why it failed miserably. But again, if a central body or a government body is willing to run the same aspects, it's going to work beautifully. So IMO is an amazing body, but they don't want to be in any conflict. Let me put it that way. And unfortunately, I can't comment on anything. But you said, how can you do it? I'm just giving an example how it's already being done.
I mean, you can't even, I mean, on the digital ID thing, I mean, the politics of that in Australia is such that it's never going to happen. I mean, like the Indian Aadhaar system is not going to happen, right?
No.
There will be digital ID to some extent, but it's the politics. You even have politicians today saying, you know, they're running on a platform of no digital ID, right? So it's impossible for whereas the India stack's phenomenal. I mean, look at what you can do to an economy through such a platform.
For example, even in North America or Europe, simple thing, yeah, there are a lot of places where you're capturing biometrics and the iris. but you have to delete the data within 24 hours. So you're not allowed to store the data. Like there are rules and regulations around it, but like even our models today, how it works in Southeast Asia is they want to understand each human being that's out there. Whereas in Europe and North America, our models blur out the minute they see any face. So we had to do that differentiation because again, regulations on geopolitical situation. But again, I go back to it. Is it possible? It's very much possible. Is this tech stack available? It's available. It's how the governments or again, the continents want to utilize it. And today I know I can get all your signatures using AI.
Okay, let's go to another round of questions. We've got a few minutes left.
Yeah. So
Is that a question?
yeah, it's a
okay.
question, right?
So we'll go to you, and then we'll go. Where else have we got another question? Just here, yeah. Any women in the audience want to ask a question? No. Okay, go.
I think you're catering to everyone in that sense. So I was a bit late in the discussion, so I don't know whether that's covered or not. But I see that the mood in the room is more in terms of conservation of data, and since you've also mentioned that a thing like a DigiYatra can't be implemented in the supply chain scenario. Can't a blockchain, it's more of a suggestion, but can't a thing like a blockchain or some sort of a decentralized scenario can also be put in terms of a world trading scenario when the shipping aspect comes into the picture? So what are your opinion on that?
So blockchain, any one other question just here? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rahul Singh. I study climate change at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. First of all, thank you for such insightful session how AI can be incorporated in shipping industry to make it sustainable. Arguably, AI is anytime efficient than human. We talked about 96 and 99%. But my question is that one thing that AI does not do is take responsibility. What if something goes wrong, especially in shipping industry where there are different multiple stakeholders and different safety checks involved? What if something goes wrong? Who will be held accountable for collective action?
Good question. All right. I'll throw those to you three here. Dawoon, you've got an answer. Coordinate.
I think sorry. I think it's a great question. I think at the end of the day, AI models are trained by human beings, and therefore we are ultimately responsible. The trainers of the models are ultimately responsible, and I can tell you that if you negotiate a contract with the main model providers, they do take on liability for their models, right? And we insist on it too. Of course, having said that, I can also tell you that the model providers invest billions of dollars in putting guardrails around these models, in running safety checks on them, in ensuring that the models don't go off the rails, because as the models get bigger and more powerful, they also become less comprehensible to us. And I can tell you that the folks at Anthropic and OpenAI will be frank enough to admit that frequently they do not really know what is going on in the very deep interiors of these models. So in that sense, we are aware of our known unknowns, right? We know that these things, this is how it is. And so red teaming, for example, where the model companies actively try to break the model to get it to do dangerous stuff, right? Red teaming exercises are meant to ensure that you detect this behavior in advance, and then you put guardrails around it and you ensure that the model does not go off. It is a massive, massive area hidden from us when we actually just see the outputs of the model, but that doesn't mean they're not doing it. Trust me, they are far more worried about the models than anybody in this room. They understand far better than us how steep the curve is. As human beings, we don't really understand exponentials. This is running away from us pretty fast right now. So yeah, great question. And there will, but responsibility, it's got to be the providers. Yeah.
Okay, I think that Samir is saying it's over. Our time is up. There are lots more questions. Apologies, we won't get to you, but I just want to thank our fabulous panelists, Ganga, Dawoon, and Som. The new podcast on AI and ports is coming soon. But thank you all for your insights. It's been a really interesting conversation, and I will never look at my home deliveries the same way again. Thank you to all of you. Thank you.